I remember the first two I saw coming. I was coming home at night. I always shined the fields in the fall of the year, looking, when I'd work shift work and coming home at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, whenever. What depends on if I was a supervisor, it was 9 o'clock. But two wolves, and it was great to see them the first time. They were majestic and running, and they were out in the field, and they were hunting. And I didn't see no deer, but it was great. But then all of a sudden, it's every day, every night. The one neighbor, and we'd get to work, and he was a millwright, and I was a machine tender, and I'd call him up and say, "Did you see him by so and so's house?" And yep, they were cruising the ditches, and just these two pair. But then they became just fearless. Them two.
Oh my God, that was so scary.
I know. That happened to me too. It's like creepy.
Yeah.
And you were alone?
I was alone, and I didn't have a weapon. I was potting flowers.
Several times we've had that, actually.
But I could feel it
Twice we've had
watching
that.
me, and we didn't have a dog. And I'm like, and he works shift work, and I'm like, gosh, I just feel like I'm being watched, but I could never see it. And I could just feel something watching me, but I could not get a grasp on it. Finally, I'm like, I got to get this done. I mean, it's getting, 7:30. So I'm sitting in here, and I'm like, I'm just planting, and I'm keeping the phone right here. And I got done, and I happened to see something out of the corner of my eye, and I looked, and he's standing right there watching me, and I'm like, holy shit. I mean, like right on the edge of the road, right where that snowbank is. He was on this side of the snowbank, and I'm like, that's really close.
There was no snow at that time, but I mean this.
It was Memorial Weekend.
He left his tracks, and that's how Gentleman, when he came out the next day, just by chance he was out because David lost a steer down at the farm. And just by chance he came out that day, and he asked me what I was doing, and I said, we had a wolf in our yard last night. And we went through the motion because there was a sprayer here during the afternoon from the co-op spraying, and we went back through the time frame of the tracks on the road, and this happened at 7 o'clock in the evening. And then he measured it was 28 feet from our garage at 7 o'clock on Memorial Day weekend, so it's very broad daylight.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty late.
Yeah.
And I looked, and I thought, the minute I run, I know it's going to run. So I stood up, and I could see it run, and I went to the corner of the house, and he's standing on the hill looking at me, and I'm like, with my flowers
Shook her
sprayed,
spatula.
get out of here, go on, like I'm this brave knight, and I'm like, ah. And then I run in, and I'm like, there's a wolf like right there watching me, and he goes, well, get a gun. I go, well, I knew it would run the same time I would run, so I was like, no, it's gone. But he's the one that came, and then we were talking to him too, and
Then he called Woody from Merrill.
right, and he came out, and we were talking, and he said, well, I'm going to suggest that you start carrying a weapon when I'm outside in my backyard, which is like horrible. And I said, well, I got this 5-year-old nephew who lives with us, and he's like, watch him and do not let him out of your sight. So for that whole summer, he could not leave our deck unless I was outside, because I'm like, buddy, you can't go swing. I can't leave you out of my sight. It was stalking the horses. I think it was after the little one, because it was old.
We moved here in 1992. I bought my uncle's house here, and my boys and I helped on the farm, and we didn't see wolves until 1998. We started seeing them. I'd see them on my way to work. And another neighbor, we'd get to work, and we'd talk about the wolves that we saw on the way to town. And then at that time, or shortly thereafter, one of the neighbors had a dog, got attacked by wolves, and had quite a vet bill on it. I'm not sure the exact year, but in 1999, my daughter was showing horses, and we had this pair of wolves were just fearless. They'd come up close to the house, and I'll show you the corral that we had the horses in, and they didn't attack the horses, but they harassed them so bad they put them through the fence, and the one got tangled up in the barbed wire and a T-post, and it severed its hoof. I mean, it completely severed.
Cut its coffin
the
joint,
hoof.
like just flapping.
And we had to put that.
We had to
vet from
euthanize it,
Rhinelander,
yeah.
and we had to put it to sleep. So then we go and we bought another horse. This first one was a $2,200 horse, and then the next year we bought a $1,500 horse. And my daughter worked with it religiously all year. And same thing happened to them. It went through the fence, and it had a gash, about a 12-inch gash up its leg, and the flesh just rolled out of it like a lobster would come out of the lobster shell, the fresh flesh. And we took him up to the
the vet came here,
Graper.
and then he said it would be wise for me to keep him because he had to change the bandage so much.
yeah. So he
And we're
spent
such a hour and some minutes away, so
8 days up at the vet. Then in 2001, and we had complained right away in '99. I got a little emotional on the phone with the DNR, and obviously I lost my cool and threatened. He said I had threatened an endangered animal.
well,
But at first he said they're wolf-like, and I said, how can I be threatening an endangered animal if they're wolf-like? Finally, in 2001, they collared a wolf, a light collared. It was a really light-colored wolf. And they told me that it was a female and it was pregnant.
and they tagged her back here behind the
Yeah.
farm.
And then at that time we had a black lab and an old collie, and they'd lay right outside our bedroom window in the summer, And one in 2002,
It was July.
no, 2001. This was still 2001. That night, we could hear the dogs the moment the wolves got close. They just right out our window, and it was in August. I believe it was in August. And we had the windows
It was
open.
end of
and
July because
just
it was right before we left for Montana because Grant had to stay home and I was freaking out because my son had to stay home alone. He's
just
a
a
senior.
ferocious. We never heard it out of our dog before. I mean, growls. They bark when people come in, and Linda went right to the window, and I come through the
And
house.
then we heard a yip like they got hurt.
And our black lab, which was almost a year old.
Yeah.
He was laying on his back and right out in the front yard, and I was standing out on the cement there in my underwear, and this gray wolf had this dog down, and the wolf took off right away down the road, and the dog come running up to me, and it was soaking wet, and I thought it was blood, but it was just slobber.
But he did get attacked because he had it on
Yeah,
his
he
ear.
got scratched, but he didn't get.
Yeah, he didn't get like stitches or anything.
Then I always go for a walk, and I hike this road back. It's a mile out to the gate and back, or a mile out to the gate and then coming back. Well, I was out there with the dogs, and I get out there about a half mile away, and there's a black wolf. The next morning, there's a black wolf on the field, right in front of me on the road, and I yelled at it, and it took off into the woods to the north, a little reluctantly, and I kind of stayed on the road and went by and hurried up, finished my walk. I come back, and the wolf's on the field again. Now it doesn't want to leave, and I don't have a weapon with me. I'm walking with two dogs, and I yelled and screamed, and I looked for something just a stick, but it's all farm field back there, and got it to go off again. Well, I make a big circle this time around it, and I hurry for home now. We saw it again. It followed us all the way home through the alfalfa back here. The alfalfa was about knee high. And when I got home and I was telling my son about it, and it was creeping up on this Shetland pony, we were down to one horse that we were boarding for my brother. My daughter was still showing horses, and she kept her show horse over there because we just couldn't keep the horses in the pen with the wolves here. And I told my brother, you got to come and get your horse because it ain't going to be long. But anyway, the wolf came creeping through the alfalfa right up to the pen. So we went a year without a wolf, and then in 2002 he lost his dog back at the Otter Lake Park, which is about a mile and a half through the woods here.
And that is on the DNR website.
Yeah.
That is part of their permanent record that dog was killed by wolves.
Yeah, he raises show dogs.
Yeah. Grand Champion. This was a
Yeah,
Grand Champion.
and this was his female, and he was out running her with the pups.
So we decided at that time we're going to get another dog, and we built a kennel out of treated 2x4s, and it wasn't to keep the dogs in, it was to keep the wolves out. They were coming. We had gone for a walk
It was August before the fair, yeah.
In 2003, we went for a walk behind the house, and we had the dogs with us, and we were coming home, and it's
It was
all
like
open
2
field.
o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, it was...
And there was something right by our shed out here, and the deer were out feeding in the fields at times. There was no deer at that time out there, but as we're walking, we're about a quarter mile away, and we're going, what the heck is that? It's right in the afternoon. And
Right behind the barn.
the closer we get, and here's a wolf creeping around our kennel, around our shed. As soon as it saw us, it ran off. It took off right away. In 2006, Memorial Weekend, Linda, my daughter, and her boyfriend were mowing lawn. They had the rider, the pusher, and the weed whacker going at noon. And as soon as they got done, Brittany and her boyfriend came in, and they
sat here
and fell
had a
asleep.
cold drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at 1 o'clock,
I happened to look out the window,
2 wolves.
and we had a burning barrel in the corner where now the corral is, and I'm like, 2 wolves are sitting there. It was 20 minutes after we got done, and 2 wolves are sitting there on this side of the burning barrel in our yard, right by those pine trees. And I'm looking, and I'm like, oh my God. And I can see that one had pups because I could see lactation. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, her
20 minutes after we stopped all this commotion outside. So were they watching us? Because the woods are right there. I'm like, that is creepy. And then it was a year later when
exactly
that wolf
a year
came,
later, Memorial Weekend again.
and then that one came through and stalked me. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this is creepy. So yeah, needless to say, I quit walking because I don't want to carry a firearm. But we used to walk all the time, and Tom would carry one because you just never knew. They were not afraid of us or the dogs. And we didn't want our dogs attacked, so we're like, and we could stop our dogs so far, but I mean.
Unless you got them on a leash, you can't.
Yeah, and we don't leash them when we go back here. I mean, we let them go, but.
But I had once, I would walk the snowmobile trail around, and this was after I was carrying a weapon. I would go for my walk and carry the weapon, and I got just about around on a 3.5 mile loop, and I was exhausted. It's all
It's the old snowmobile trail.
And I come back, and I just about out to the fields, and 2 wolves stepped out on the snowmobile trail in front of me, and I'm going, great. Now what do I do? They're still a couple hundred yards ahead of me, and I'm yelling for them. I took my pistol out and fired a shot in the air, and they took off, But I mean, just jeepers, I don't want to have to shoot one, but you have the dog with you, and hear that they're hungry. It's middle of winter. They've gone where our deer population was down to almost nothing at that time. Yeah, and then it was 2007. My cousin's son was digging up in the hills here. Quack digging in the spring of the year, and he calls his dad. He had his cell phone, calls his dad, and he said there's 2 wolves heading for Tom and Linda's house through the open hardwoods here. They went right by the tractor and the digger, 100 yards out in the field where he could see them, and they were heading right for the house. I don't know exactly when the years Dave lost his 2 steers, but
2010.
2010.
Yeah, that was when Jack.
Okay, that's
Jack
when I got it.
had
That's when I got it on
probably
here, but I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Jack lost his first, I believe, and that was April 1st. And then Dave lost the first one on the first week of
Yeah.
May.
Wow.
Something around that Memorial time that these wolves just became bold because it was almost like 3 years in a row. 2010 is when the story Linda told, when they came 28 feet from the house. And then in 2000, we actually had they call it a health and human safety permit. From the DNR and Merrill came up, and he just said, we don't know what this pack of wolves, but they're just fearless. He said, just go ahead and shoot, and
Because we had Jonathan, the younger one, and then
we
had a year-old grandchild, which was too young. But he said, you just can't have this. You guys got to watch out for the kids.
The last time we saw wolves was in 2016 out here. We had a pair with 4 pups on one of the back fields.
We caught them on video.
Yeah, spring of the year.
Yeah.
We see them on trail cameras once in a while. And right after I talked to you last, I went back here where my uncle was logging, and there's two tracks go right through his logging yard, you know, where he parks the tractor.
Because we were looking for the coyote tracks,
Yeah.
and I said, "No, these are bigger. What do you think these are?" Because there's some big coyotes out there.
Oh, these were wolves.
And we got out, and they were, yeah, definitely wolves.
So but we're seeing coyotes all the time too. So
They
I'm
are?
thinking that that's
Yeah.
the
I
wolves
know.
somewhere. They're somewhere over there.
Well-
They put some fencing. They put some ribbons.
Did
on
they have that
fencing
gun
and
first that would boom or a scream or something?
I think they might have had a propane tank with a
Noisemaker.
noisemaker
Yeah,
every once in a
but
while
that
that would let
didn't-
out a blast.
They got used to that.
But yeah, the fencing. We
And then they
watched them
put-
come right through the fence.
yeah.
You know, we have 4 strands of electric fence, and I'm sure it's some kind of a deterrent. But we've had wolves in the fence too. You know, we've seen them. Wildlife Services came out
Yeah.
5 or 6 times. The original in '99 when we lost the horse, you know, they came out and there was no wolf tracks in the corral. It was a barbed wire fence at that time. We had 4 strands of barbed wire.
That's when they weren't really seen in Lincoln County.
right.
So they kept saying it's wolf-like, wolf-like. And they would have, you know, a wolf counting day. If you go out and see a track, call in. Well, to me, that was our argument. How can you tell us they're wolf-like, but yet you have the same Joe Schmo going into the woods and saying, I found a track. But I know that there was a university that came out and said, oh, come see the wolf den. The
An
same
evening
time.
with the wolves, you know.
Yeah, and we're
That was
like, and
4
they're,
miles away,
Yeah.
so we knew they were here.
it's like,
We have university professors acknowledging that they were here, but had tracks right up pacing.
but they really never offered
Pacing the
us to
horses
do anything.
corral, them 2 or 3 years that we had horses back here, and
You could just tell. You could just tell they stand there and they snort and they sniff and you could just tell when they were close. When this was a operating dairy farm, when we moved out here, they had a maternity pen. And there was one calf in during milking time. And Tom was
In the
going
morning.
for a walk, and he noticed that she calved. So he went into the barn when he got done with his walk, and he said, oh, so what'd she have, you know, a bull or a heifer? And he goes, no, we're still waiting for her to calf. And he goes, oh, no, I pretty much saw that calf. So by the time he went through and came back, a wolf came in and took that calf, and nobody knew it.
it just disappeared.
Yeah,
I mean, there was no bones, there was no,
just
it
gone.
was a newborn Holstein calf, it was gone, 100-pound calf, so I mean.
Yeah, it's...
But there was no sign.
But they never saw it, so if we went to said, no, she did calf, they would have been like, what's going on? I mean, it would have took them a while longer to figure out what went on, but
These city folk about that wolves evolve and they'll avoid confrontations at all costs, and that's not true. They learn from every confrontation they have, so they don't make the mistakes again that they made the first time. You know, they become very good at
they're a smart
being
animal.
thieves and stealing dogs and cats and calves and chickens. And I'm not for shooting all the wolves. I am not.
And like us,
Ask permission.
that's our bread and butter. I mean, that's $1,000 animal that calf will be for us. You know, so that's money.
It's just, we're
I
not-
just need to protect mine. I mean, you wouldn't give up $1,000 because you don't want them, you know, because this guy thinks they're beautiful.
So you're gonna keep that cow, how many calves is it gonna produce?
Yeah.
Right.
And so you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars
Well,
possibly.
like
Yeah.
that story with the guy who lost his grand champion. You know, so he went through all this and was speaking out, and then what was it? I don't want to name names, but he said, you know, you'll be glad to know I got coverage for your dog. When he gave him like $3,000.
I got the maximum 2,500, and Scott said, "Well, that's great. The dog was worth $10,000."